Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. I just need the book. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, titled The Creative Impetus. Chapter 5, Lord Rsabhadeva's teachings. We're on text 16. Lokaha Swayam Shayasi Nashtadrishihi Yaha Artan Samiheta Nikama Kamaha Anyonya Vairaha Sukalesha Hetaho Anantadukam Cha Na Veda Mudaha Loka Swayam Shayasi Nashta Drishtir Yortan Samiheta Nikama Kamaha Anyonya Vaira Sukalesha Hetor Anantadukam Chanaveda Mudaha Loka Swayam Shayasi Nashta Drishtir Yortan Samiheta Nikama Kamaha Anyonya Vaira Sukalesha Hetor Anantadukam Chanaveda Mudaha Loka Swayam Shayasi Nashta Drishtir Yortan Smite Heta Nikama Kamaha Anyonya Vaira Sukalesha Hetor Anantadukam Chanaveda Mudaha Lokaha, people. Swayam, personally. Shayasi, of the path of auspiciousness. Nasta drishtihi, who have lost sight. Yaha, who. Artan, things meant for sense gratification. Samiheta, desire. Nikama kamaha, having too many lusty desires for sense enjoyment. Anyonya, Vairaha, being envious of one another. Sukalesha hetaha, simply for temporary material happiness. Anantadukam, unlimited sufferings. Cha, also. Na, do not. Veda, no. Mudaha, foolish. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. Purport. The word nashta drishtihi meaning one who has no eyes to see the future, is very significant in this verse. Life goes on from one body to another, and the activities performed in this life are enjoyed or suffered in the next life, if not later in this life. One who is unintelligent, who has no eyes to see the future, simply creates enmity and fights with others for sense gratification. As a result, one suffers in the next life, but due to being like a blind man, he continues to act in such a way that he suffers unlimitedly. Such a person is a mudha, one who simply wastes his time and does not understand the Lord's devotional service. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 7, Text 25, Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritaha mudho yam nabijanati loko mam ajam avyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my eternal creative potency, Yogamaya. And so the deluded world knows me not, who am unborn and infallible. In the Kathopanishad it is also said, Vidyayam antare varta manaha swayam dira panditam manyamanaha. Although ignorant, people still go to other blind men for leadership. As a result, both are subjected to miserable conditions. The blind lead the blind into the ditch. Om Meganitavedandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militamyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karitavachalam Pangam Langai Tegirim Yakapitamaham Bande Shri Gurun Diditadanam Bancha Kovadirubisha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhanitananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So read the translation again. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. So one time there was Prabhupada mentions this story that there was a man and he was on a tree. Obviously he wasn't so bright or intelligent, but he was on a tree, high up in a tree, and he was on a branch, and then he had a saw, and while he was sitting on the branch, he started sawing like this on this side, sawing. And then another man came and said, "Hey, what are you doing up there?" He said, "Well, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm sawing this branch." He said, "Well, if you continue like that, you're gonna fall. You're gonna fall down and hurt yourself." And the guy says, "Hey, back off. I know what I'm doing, and get lost. I don't appreciate your trying to instruct me." So they kept on sawing, right? And then eventually, the branch, snapped, and then he fell on the ground. He hurt himself, broke his arm, whatever. And then sometime later, he saw that guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, maybe I should have listened to you." He said, "What?" He said, "From what I can understand now, you must be a very learned astrologer. You're predicting the future, right?" So similarly, for a wise person, and the spiritual master is like Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that in a purport he says that Krishna gives the spiritual master unlimited intelligence to help the disciple, which makes sense because the spiritual master is said to be the right external manifestation of the super soul, so he's supposed to be intelligent, right? You don't want to accept anyways. So for a wise person, the spiritual master, for the devotees, for senior devotees or for advanced devotees, it's to be expected that they should be able to guide others, right? They should be able to guide others. And you could say, in one sense, they can foresee the future. Of course, you have rare cases of devotees who could really foresee the future, like absolutely. But there's signs. There's certain signs, just like the man's cutting the branch, right? There's a clear sign that he's doing a foolish thing and he's going to fall down and hurt himself. So much of the spiritual master's guidance, or advanced devotee, senior devotee's guidance for others, is that they could foresee the future, and these, you could say, common sense, or these different ways. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. Of course, he is said to be Trikalagya, a knower of the past, present, and future. And it's understood that he had extraordinary power to do that. For example, but you could say in some ways, some of what he predicted may have just been maybe what others could have predicted as well. In other words, other wise persons or other devotees. Like, for example, there's a case where Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, he asked one of his brahmacharis, let me see your hand. So the brahmachari gave Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura his hand, which, is very fortunate circumstance when Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura says, let me see your hand, and he's holding your hand. So Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura is holding this brahmachari's hand like this, and he was looking at the lines in his hand, and he said, from these lines I could understand that you should get married. He said that, and that's what that brahmachari did. So foreseeing the future, from the point of view of looking at a person's hand. Of course, and then also you have Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, who talking to Srila Prabhupada, at Radhakund, right, most holy place in the universe, Radhakund, and some devotees say that it's understood that Srila Prabhupada was walking with Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura with some of his. It seemed like they were more alone while Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura said this to Srila Prabhupada, but there's a case, Bhakti Vikas Swami, he points out in this Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava book, that there's a case of I think it was Obiel Kapoor or somebody remembering, because they were there, that Srila Prabhupada had a conversation with Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. I think it was at Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura's ashram. There's his house, his dwelling place, or it might have been in the Gaudiya Mat there, in his room. They had a conversation. And in that, so whether it was walking in the room, but in that conversation, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura said, there'll be fire in the mutt. So mutt is, it's a place where all the brahmacharis, sannyasis, they live, with the deities in the temple. So there'll be a fire in the mutt. You're saying the whole Gaudiya Mat. And historically, yeah, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And Srila Prabhupada was instructed by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura on that particular occasion also, should preach in English. He said, if you ever get money, print books. Which, it doesn't mean just print books and let them sit in a warehouse, because, you know, if your spiritual master says, oh, print books, and you say, all right, great, I printed some books. Well, what are you supposed to do with those books? You know, distribute. So it's not that, like, for example, as a movement, we say, okay, great, we printed books. We have a whole warehouse full of them in LA. All right, we did our business, right? We're following the guru. But it means to distribute as much as possible. And that's how you keep a book alive. That's how you keep a movement alive. That's how you keep particular ideas alive. They have to be printed, or else they just die over time, practically speaking, or become completely obscured or lost. Just like during Bhakti Vinod Thakur's time, he had a hard time finding Chaitanya Charitamrita before he manifested his pastimes as Bhakti Vinod Thakur as we know him. He had a hard time finding Chaitanya Charitamrita in his early life. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's like if we had a hard time finding Srila Prabhupada, like we completely searched for Srila Prabhupada's books all over America and we just couldn't find any. That's a really deplorable state. Like, for example, if ISKCON, if the BBT, if devotees just became so non-existent that we had a hard time, somebody in the future had a hard time finding one of Srila Prabhupada's books. I mean, that's a really bad state, you know. That's an unfortunate state. And practically you could find Prabhupada's books everywhere now. I mean, even Grants Pass, Oregon, it's some practically freeway town up in Southern California. I have some family there, but I was at a library and I was looking for Srila Prabhupada's books, and yeah, some are there. So they're making their way around. But so Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, he would predict things, and he would know certain things. Now, of course, what does it mean when they say that the spiritual master, also it says that a disciple should know everything? What does that mean? So, for example, one time Srila Prabhupada was asked about this, about the spiritual master knowing everything, and somebody challenged him. He said, oh, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? And then Srila Prabhupada said, how many drops of water in a mirage? You know, it's a mirage. In other words, that's not essential knowledge. But the spiritual master and the disciples, they know the most essential knowledge, therefore they know the essence of things, right? So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada bringing this point up is that people, nashta drishtahi, one who has no eyes to see the future. So it doesn't mean that we have to develop eyes. We have to develop eyes or a vision where we see everything in the future. Like, absolutely. But what it means is that we should be able to see into the future in the sense that if I do this, if I do that, if I do this, if I do that, it's not going to be very good for my spiritual life. In other words, we're not blinded by passion. Because people who are blinded by passion or ignorance, they don't have any eyes to see the future. Oh, well, if I do this, if I do that, if I do this, I'm going to be unhappy, or it's not going to be good for my spiritual life, right? Or it's not going to work out. So in that way, we should have eyes. In other words, we should be intelligent to see the future. Okay, what's going to be the results of my activities? What are going to be the results of my activities? And you could say, oh, well, that seems easy enough, right? Well, not exactly. If one's consciousness becomes hijacked by Mr. Lust, then there's no possibility of seeing into the future. It's just whatever Mr. Lust demands, right? Or Mr. Greed or Mr. Anger or all the other people. There's no seeing into the future. It's just whatever they demand, that's what needs to be done, and that's what's done, and then we suffer the consequences. That's why there's a whole prison system, right? Because people, blinded by passion, blinded by ignorance, they can't see into the future that I do this, I do this, I do this. In other words, they're not thinking clearly, and then they do something, and then they're in prison because they can't see. And Kali Yuga is full of such people, just absolute madness. Sorry to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up for a particular purpose. So it's just full of such madness, actually. Like Rsabhadeva is saying here, Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya priti apnoti nasadamanye, right? That those who are just mad after sense gratification, in other words, those who can't see into the future, blinded by ignorance and passion, it's unfortunate, they're mad. It's actually a state of insanity. But just like recently, somebody told me, I don't know, because there's all these like strange philosophies and weird like things out there, right? So anyways, this guy who was apparently into Jesus, but obviously not enough, but there was this guy, and he was married, and I saw, anyways, somebody sent me a picture of him and his family. Wife, 2 sons, looked like a normal guy, American guy, American family, looked happy, right? And then the guy ended up killing his 2 sons. Young sons. The guy's an absolute just idiot, animal. But based on the voice in his mind. Based on the voice in his mind. Blinded by the darkest of ignorance and passion. Not able to see the future, not able to have the power to discriminate, And the voice in his mind said, "Oh, kill your 2 sons." And the reason being is because your wife has serpent DNA, and if you don't kill your 2 sons, they're gonna destroy the world, take over the world. It's like just like a complete insanity. And he did it. Now he's in jail, obviously. A lot of people think he should just be killed, but anyways, I guess they don't do that. At least in this country, so much that we know about. But maybe sometimes, who knows? But at least not openly they do that. But in other countries, maybe they would do that. But anyways, so of course this is a very extreme example. But within the human being, our potential is the best of the best and the worst of the worst. It really is. So of course, we could say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do that. That's completely insane. I'm not even going to think about doing that. What to speak of getting close to doing that." But in our own lesser ways, we could fall into this trap, not able to see the future, blinded by passion, blinded by ignorance. So, therefore, Krishna consciousness means it sharpens our intelligence, purifies our intelligence to the point where we're able to see the future very clearly, and therefore, if we're really able to see the future very clearly, and of course not absolutely, but in the ways what we're describing here. That I'm describing here, then we could act as guru, and that's good. That is very good. Diksha guru, Shiksha guru, Vartma Pradarshaka guru. In Vartma Pradarshaka guru, sometimes we kind of we don't talk about that so much, right? Oh, it's just like the guy who was you're at a party and both of you guys were stoned, and the guy said, "Hey, you should go to the Hare Krishna temple. They got some really good food." He's like, "That's my Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. All right, Jai, Which is true. He is your Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. He showed you the path. But Vartma Pradarshaka Guru could be very advanced. Like they could be like agents, agents of Krishna wandering throughout the country and city and, giving people Krishna consciousness in the form of books and friendship and the holy name and whatever, just somehow or other acting as agents, right? So Vartma Pradarshaka Guru, in so many ways, without them, it's like, it's almost like of course, Shiksha Guru could also act in that role as well as Diksha Guru, but a lot of the times you have cases where Shiksha Gurus, they're, advisors, and when somebody enters into the path, and you have Diksha Gurus, many of them who are like advisors and gurus when people enter the path. But the Vartma Pradarshaka Gurus, they bring people to the path. As they all work together. Very important. So yeah, book distribution, book distributors, for example, it's a role of a guru. Very important. But in order to be a the best, or you could say the most potent Vartma Pradarshaka Guru, Shiksha Guru, or Diksha Guru, one has to be able to themselves sharpen the intelligence, be able to see beyond passion and ignorance, not be blinded, be able to see the future, foresee, right? And this way, they themselves could be free, right? Largely or completely from illusion, and able to help others. So one thing is we should develop that vision more and more and more. But another thing is we should accept that vision exists in others. That it's not like, all right, well, yeah, he's been practicing Krishna consciousness for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but by doing that and sticking with it, they must have some sense of able to foresee the future and some wisdom there. So we should accept that others have that. And therefore the principle of guru and disciple and, these are different ideas. So then in the purport also, Srila Prabhupada's bringing up how Krishna, well, specifically how a mudha, or a foolish person, wastes his time, doesn't understand Krishna or his devotional service. So it's also discussing this person not able to see the future. What to speak of they can't see the future, blinded by passion and ignorance? What to speak of seeing Krishna? They can't see Krishna, they can't see Krishna's devotional service. They can't understand the importance of it. Many people don't understand the importance of it. Naham prakasha sarvasya. So I said, Krishna says, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. So we have to be wise and intelligent. For them I am covered by my eternal creative potency, yogamaya, and so the deluded world knows me not, who am unborn and infallible. So people, they don't recognize Krishna. They also don't recognize devotees. So we shouldn't be like that. We should recognize Krishna's position. We should also recognize the devotees. And we should serve all devotees. There's really humble devotees out there who really take it to the limit. But if we don't want to do that, maybe we could do that, but if we should at least serve somehow or other. We could serve everybody somehow or other. We shouldn't think people are not servable. Everyone's servable. I think that's a word, right? Servable? Is it? Maybe not. In this context. Just like you have you have that devotee in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Everyone throughout whole Bengal, right? He'd take all their remnants, Vaishnav remnants, right? And he would arrange it too. He'd go to Jadu Thakur, and this devotee went to his house, and he said, I brought some mangoes for you. You please take it, and then you give me the remnants. And Jadu Thakur said, no, I can't do that. He said, you're born in a Brahmin family, and I can't do that. And Jadu Thakur said, I'm just a Shudra, and then this devotee said to Jadu Thakur, well, no, you're a devotee. And then he started quoting all these different shlokas, saying that to be a Vaishnav is doesn't matter your external position, Shudra, this, that, doesn't matter. If you're a devotee, then you're transcendental to all that. And then Jadu Thakur said, yes, that's true, that's scriptural, but the problem is I'm not a devotee. He said, so these type of conversations have been going on for a long time. So he said, I'm not a devotee. And then this devotee, I think it was Kalidas, which I don't exactly know why his name's Kalidas. Devotees could look it up, but it is Kalidas, I think with the long A, which I'm not exactly sure why he got that name. But anyway, so Kalidas, he said, okay, well, at least take the mango. And Jadu Thakur said, okay, fine. So he took it, offered it to Krishna. Interesting enough, he said he offered it in his mind. Offered his mind to Krishna, and him and his wife had it. Of course, we got to be careful with that offering the mind to Krishna. And Jadu Thakur, actually, Kalidas said he would actually also play kind of like a chess. So, anyways, Prabhupada mentions that in the beginning of the pastime too. Anyways, so Jadu Thakur had this mango, and he ate it, and threw out the seed and the skin and everything, biodegradable, right? His window. And who was there waiting? Kalidas, right? And he had the remnants. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, says that this is extremely powerful for awakening love for Krishna. Dust from a devotee's feet, water that's washed the devotee's feet, and the remnants. These have the power to awaken love for Krishna. And then later on, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going into the Jagannath temple, he was washing his feet there, and specifically in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would make sure no one would have this water. But he also said that devotees would by trick sometimes get it. When Kalidas arrived there, he went. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was getting his feet washed, and then he put his hand there, and he took 3 sips, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Okay, it's enough." But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's explained that the reason why he got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that special mercy, because he had so much faith in the Vaishnavas. And faith means it's active. It's not like, all right, yeah, I have faith in all of you, but we don't. But I don't do anything. I don't serve you. Faith means that we have faith, but we also serve practically somehow or other. So we should recognize Krishna, the devotees, and it's not that, just because Krishna, like for example in Krishna Lila, there was many personalities who saw Krishna, but many of them didn't understand Krishna, like Shushupal, right? Shushupal didn't understand Krishna. The end result was decapitation, but right, by Krishna. He didn't understand Krishna. He recognized his position. So similarly, like with the devotees, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, there was one personality who was talking with Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura about how he would always associate with Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura said, "You've never seen Bhaktivinoda Thakur." And then this man was saying, "Oh, what do you mean? I mean, we would talk all the time." And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he kept on saying it. You've never seen him. You've never seen Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Which he was making the point that, okay, you've talked with him, you've so-called seen him, but you don't understand his position. So we should try to understand and not fall into this category of not understanding, not seeing. Srila Prabhupada brings in he quotes 725, the Bhagavad Gita, and then in the purport of the Bhagavad Gita, this verse, he mentions Queen Kunti's prayers. It's a similar idea. And in Queen Kunti's prayer, she's saying, please remove this veil of Maya so I could see you. But in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada has a nice, there's a nice quote from Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. And he says, partially due to their poor fund of knowledge, and partially due to their stubborn obstinacy. So in other words, people can't see Krishna or understand Krishna consciousness. One reason, partially due to their poor fund of knowledge. That's one reason. And then partially due to their stubborn obstinacy. Means they don't want to surrender. Stubborn. Now Srila Prabhupada brings up an interesting point. He says, this stubborn obstinacy, which results from various past misdeeds and present. Misdeeds in the past and the present. So, in other words, people can't understand Krishna consciousness, can't understand the importance due to poor fund of knowledge and being stubborn. And what is the stubbornness coming from? It's coming from past misdeeds and present. Means they're too, as the Christians like to use the word, sinful. So the heart is too dirty. So therefore the process of Krishna consciousness is to cleanse, Cheto, Darpana, Marjanam, to the point where we, first of all, the knowledge is manifesting, right? And then after that, we give up our stubborn obstinacy because we stop committing past, the past misdeeds are absolved, whatever we're supposed to suffer from and the reactions we're suffering, and also the present. In other words, we come to the point of having a pure, you could say, heart. That's the idea. So and this is important because purity is the force. Like at the end of the purport we'll just end with is that people go to other blind men for leadership. So this is the world. People go to other blind men for leadership. Just completely don't know what to do. Don't know where to go left or right. Just completely bewildered. Of course, some are maybe more refined bewildered, but bewildered. And both are subjected to miserable conditions, right? So we say, oh, well, this sounds dogmatic, right? You're just saying everybody's blind and no leadership. Okay, well, what's the proof? Well, if everybody knew what they're doing, why are they suffering so much? Why is the world suffering so much if everybody knows, right? Why are there so many miserable conditions increasing if everybody knows? Or if the leaders know? It means they don't know. People think by taking shelter of different forms of Maya, I'll be happy, right? It's just completely trick of the mind. And if that was true, then why isn't everybody else happy? If it's so easy, I just have all types of various Maya that I want to go for, and if I go for them, I'll be happy. That's the mind saying, right? Sometimes. Okay, if that was true, then why isn't the whole world happy? They're all going for Maya. I mean, there's a lot of miserable, there's a lot of misery going on actually. And then Prabhupada says, the blind lead the blind into a ditch. So so the idea is that if we're able to just purify ourselves, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, then we could help in whatever small way. And actually, no way is actually small. In whatever way we could help the situation, and ourselves see, and then help others see, and ultimately people be happy. So, okay. Does anybody have any?
Hare Krishna.
I think Dimitri has a question first.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
So you were talking about the guy who killed two sons, and I was thinking about what do Shastras say about death penalty, especially with accordance to our time. Death penalty.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, if you read Srila Prabhupada quotes in his Bhagavad Gita, Manu Samhita, and this is, it's Vedic literature. It's not like it's coming from other traditions. Something it's in our tradition, but there's quite some heavy things in there about different consequences that people have to face, and of course previous times. Of course, for us to implement such laws, we'll probably go to we'll probably go to jail. We'll go to jail, to try to implement such laws. But of course, also some people, they're really angry with the Manu Samhita. You have like people in India, which I don't exactly know the full story behind it, but they have like burn parties where they get copies of Manu Samhita and just burn them, because they're really angry about how strong they are and this and that. But in relation to all these crimes and people, committing these different things, some people think, okay, well, this guy kills people, he's a serial killer, and he goes around killing a bunch of people, and he's a complete animal, and then they catch him and he goes to jail, and then 3 hots and a cot, right? He's there with his hot meals and roof over his head, and of course it's miserable, it's in prison, but people get mad. Taxpayers have to pay for these people, right? Some people get mad. But if the penalties were much more severe, people would think twice, 3 times, and probably a lot of people wouldn't even do it because it's just so severe. Like Tirtha Maharaj gave the example of course, he was in Middle East, as in Qatar or somewhere like that, and he was making the point that all these like vegetable vendors and these different like vendors who have valuable things, they don't lock it up at night. They just put a like a tarp over it at night, because it's understood that if they steal something, if something like, then there's some severe consequences. So people the crime in relation, lose your hands, this and that. So there is thing in death penalty in Vedic times, the idea is that somebody kills somebody, then the government or the king they'll kill that person because it says it absolves them of those karmic reactions in their next life or whatever, and so there's some ideas like that. Yeah.
So if in a particular country people don't follow the order of the Vedas, they're going to suffer a consequence, and the crime is going to get out of hand. Does that make sense to say that?
Yeah, it's all, you could say all of the problems are based on following man-made laws versus God-made laws, because God-made laws are perfect, man-made laws are imperfect, and they're always changing things, Oh, this is right now, but now this is wrong, this is right. And it's actually quite like confusing and complicated. It's like every few years they have to reanalyze things and speculate, and right? Yeah, adaptation. It's actually quite complicated thing, you know. So, yeah. All right. Any other in-house? You have someone, Damodar Kumar? I don't know. It sounded like, it looked like your hand was going up, but it's up to you. If you want to hold back or if you want to, whatever you want to do.
Dimitri's question had sparked something within me, just related to what you're saying. So it's interesting because in the Middle East, that's a common punishment. It's as known as in the scripture in the Quran that if anyone commits such an act, then they'll receive that punishment. And we have something in line like that in our shastras, right? Like if
some things.
Somebody steals, then they lose their hands. If I'm correct, I think I've heard that before, right? Yes. And so people are really upset about that.
Yeah.
So like the whole thing with the Taliban, this is a terrorist group that's running the country in Afghanistan and other places, but they people are really upset about how they're trying to bring everything back to how we follow in scripture, and we can disagree with many things, but it's interesting how that's a very controversial thing, and we're like, well, that's also in line with our shastras too.
Yeah.
But my question is, like, for those people who, it's a really, like, say if you're a devotee and you love the philosophy, you love the practice of Krishna consciousness, but then there's certain things
hard to accept
that are hard to accept.
Yeah.
That just goes against the grains of your beliefs or your, how you were raised.
Yeah.
And so, like, what would you tell a person?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, like Srila Prabhupada would say, okay, don't add anything to the philosophy, don't subtract, right? So, yeah, it is true throughout the world, devotees just may not agree with certain things in scripture or something that Srila Prabhupada said. Sometimes, that's just a fact. Devotees just don't agree. So I would say personally that because Srila Prabhupada stressed it over and over and over again, okay, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, these some things it's like you can't like there's certain things in scripture that you just can't like interpret away. You can't just do away with it. It's just there, and it has to be accepted. And if someone doesn't want to accept it, I would say that they should try to accept it and try to understand how it does make sense. And then and still they're having a hard time to understand how it does make sense, they could just put it on the back burner. And then through the process of devotional service, they get more purified. Or you could say, their intelligence or whatever, just over time, through the practice of Krishna consciousness, those things may become more clear, make more sense. Just like Prabhupada, Prabhupada gave an example. There's an example of this Srila Prabhupada disciple. He goes to Prabhupada and he says, "Oh, Prabhupada, I like Krishna consciousness. I like chanting. I like this. I like the whole thing. But just this is too much. Lord Brahma with 4 heads on a swan carrier, and it's just too much. I can't really." And Prabhupada said, "Okay, well." He asked him, "Do you like chanting Hare Krishna?" The man said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, you just chant Hare Krishna and engage in the process of devotional service. Put that on the back burner, and over time it will become more clear." So that's there. But then so definitely I would say do that, and not what to speak of, not preach against it. Oh, this is wrong. And then let's say after prolong, because it might, decades might pass, and the person might have the same convictions against Prabhupada or against Shastra, certain things they just don't like, or they just, So I would say to those people, well, just focus on what you do agree with on Shastra and Scripture and teach that, and don't go on a whole mission trying to do away with certain things, traditional things, or, So anyways, those are some ideas.
Thank you for that. It's much appreciated. Now I like the point that you're making about how that person or such people should try to see the reasoning behind it, because there's always some justified reason behind a particular thing, and it's even the most far out things, like a life for a life, like you're saying. If you took a life, then you give your life, and then it alleviates you of that karma. And then and so like it's always rational. Like scripture is always rational. Even the most far out things, there's some sort of justification why it's that way. Unless, and we haven't seen anything that has been way too far out where it's like, and then it's just right. So
thank you. All right, so one last, Vijay Krishna.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much. The quote from the translation is, quote, "For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering," end quote. So my question is, why is it that an envious mentality is the same as plunging into the ocean of suffering? Isn't that the quality of competition, competing with each other, helps us make spiritual advancement?
All right. Yeah, thank you. Well, there's like, when devotees compete, like for example, okay, we're going to compete and we're going to distribute books, and let's see how many books you could distribute. All right, let's see how many books you can. There's like a competition. Yes, it could be done in a material way based on competition or envy or whatever, but it also could be done in a spiritual way. In other words, we'll compete, right? And then if so-and-so, Das or whatever, they distribute 100 more books than me, so I'm happy. Good. Like, all right, we had a competition and you won, and yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you're pleasing Krishna. Whereas if we have a competition and then I lose and I'm just angry, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I try to maybe sabotage you, like Vijay Prabhu was saying one time. Devotees were having a competition. There's 2 book distributors, and then well, there was one book distributor and one, citizen, ordinary person or whatever. So the book distributor was trying to give a book to this person, and the person went behind him and he's trying to sabotage the sale. He was a devotee, right? Trying to sabotage the sale. Or also you mentioned how sometimes they pop tire. Like let's say, you're going out in Sankirtan, right? All right, we want to go out early, and the person goes out early before, then you start your car. Hey, what's going on? I have a flat tire. So somebody, devotee, pop into each other's tires. I mean, of course, this is extreme. But the more subtle things is just not being happy with the other person, when they did more than you or something like that. So competition can be helpful, but we have to be careful. Passion's not mixed with it. But when it talks about plunging in the ocean of suffering, misery, based on envy, a society of envy, it's just the material world where people are envious. Oh, I want to be better than you, you want to be better than me, and I have to win, I have to be better than you in all regards, and it's a hatred, envy thing. So devotees aren't like that, right? Nirmatsaranam satam, free from envy. So anyways, that's...
Yes, Balaram Prabhu. Again, wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
You're welcome.
Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.